And we will start with our prayer for study. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work. For to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Very nice. I have papers for you. Emma, do you mind if I use your paper to show people something? There's two words that it's very easy to get mixed up. And it might, no, Emma, it's fine. Because you might have meant the one. It's unclear. And the two words are respected and respective. And so, may I have permission to read your sentence? Okay. You always are allowed to say no. Both people, this is Odysseus and Jesus, are kings of their respected homes. All right. See, this makes sense. Their homes are respected, right? Ithaca is it. But do you mind answering, do you mean that people look up to their cities, or do you mean each one has his own place? Because I'm not sure which one.
I don't know if I meant respected or respective.
Okay.
I meant they're both the kings of each of their homes.
Okay, so that's why I brought it up, because this is a very easy, but what you said makes sense, and so I was unclear. So does everybody understand how to use respective? So like each of you has his or her respective seat. You have your own seat. We have our own respective homes. So it's a very handy word, because sometimes it's very, you could say each one has his own, but they're respective. It just sums up a lot. It means everyone has the one that belongs to them. Anyway, I thought that it would be good for everybody to think about that. Or maybe you weren't even, I thought maybe some of you weren't even familiar with the respective. That it means that each one has his or her own whatever. You brought your own respective water jugs or whatever. You're not just sharing out of one big jug, which, hey, whatever, if you want to.
I have no idea if I meant respected or respective.
That's totally fine. And that's why I thought, this would be an excellent thing for me to talk about. Okay, Evelyn, incoming. Here, I'm just going to.
I will take them and I can pass it down.
Oh, thank you. We have to it's honor system to not read other people's stuff. Okay, this is Preston, Grace, Nathan, Gabriel, Noah,
Grace, thanks.
and on to Noah. Thank you. I don't think I did, but did I write ask me about this or anything weird?
Yeah, I think the only thing you did
Is the
was the one he just did.
respective. Anything else, or did I add anything? Sometimes I asked you a question, and sometimes that's me having a conversation with you. It's also hints about how you could flesh out a paragraph. So if I say, could you tell me a little bit more about this? This is something to put away for future reference and think, next time I write a paper like this, I could tell her more about whatever, all right? We'll give you a moment. We're going to write, I gave you incorrect information last week.
What?
This may happen sometimes. It is incorrect, but it's not as bad as you think. I know I told this to the Thursday kids, and I may probably have told you this. I said, write me this paper, and next week you just do a summa. Okay, Grace just gave me the look. Grace just gave me the stink eye. I am not asking you to sum up, but I'm not asking you to do a full-out essay. I'm asking you to do something that isn't really going to be much harder than a summa, and it may be easier.
Okay.
Simply because it gives you stuff you have to do, okay? So we will talk about that later, but actually, let's just talk about it now. How about we just talk about it now and get it over with? Some of you have done this with me before. If you've done my high school class in a past year, you've done a CREA. A CREA, this is on page 39 of your reading guide. A CREA is one of a series of writing assignments that in the ancient world they gave students who are training to be speakers, mostly because training in rhetoric was mostly spoken, because that's how you made your name, right? You stood up in the assembly and you gave speeches, or in the law courts or whatever. But for you guys, it's writing. And so they took them through a series. Some of these you've done, retelling a fable. I'm pretty sure you've all retold some sort of fable for me. That's one of these exercises. And it goes all the way up to a huge speech with a thesis and like a mega persuasive essay sort of thing. And all these exercises in between. And they referred to them as the pro-gymnasmata. That was gym practice. One of them is the CREA. And what a CREA is, it's simply magnifying, and by that I don't mean with a magnifying glass. I mean highlighting, interpreting a saying. So for example, a penny saved is a penny earned. This may or may not be a Ben Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, I don't remember. But I could ask you to write a paper all about a penny saved is a penny earned, and it would be a CREA. It's just, you take a saying, you take something someone said, and you elaborate on it. You tell me how great the guy is who said it, and why would he say that, and what is it like, and can you give an example, and that sort of thing. So even though many of you have read this particular example with me before, we're going to read it again, simply because it's been a while, and also because some of you haven't ever done it before. So everybody look on page 39 with me. And at the top of page 39, under the CREA, you will see that it has sections, right? It has specific sections that you do. And I am going to read this example. Aphthonius is a Greek rhetor, and he did examples for students. And this is his example. And he starts out with telling you the saying. And I'm going to read the first sentence. It says, Isocrates said that the root of education is bitter, its fruit sweet. That's the saying. The root of education is bitter, its fruit is sweet. Saying, and Isocrates is the guy who said it. So that's how we start. We give who said it and what's the saying. I'm going to give you the saying, so no worries. It says at the top, the next section is praise for the author. Praise for the author. Let's hear how Aphthonius does it. It is right to admire Isocrates for his art, for he gave it a most glorious name and proved its greatness by his practice of it. He made the art famous. By the way, his art is rhetoric. He did not owe his fame to it. To go through the benefits he conferred on human life by giving laws to kings and advice to individuals would be too long. I speak only of his wise saying on education. In other words, we go on and on how great the guy is who said it. Maybe you don't know that much about the guy who said it, but come up with something nice to say about him. Don't say, this dirty, rotten scoundrel said this terrible thing. No, that's not a CREA. So when we get to who said it, it doesn't have to be that long. But say something nice about him. Next section, paraphrase the saying. What does it mean to paraphrase something? Yeah, say the same thing but in your own words. So a penny saved is a penny earned. If I wanted to paraphrase that, I might say, if you manage to save money, it's the same as making money. A penny saved is a penny earned. I said the same thing, I just said it in my own words, not as well. So the next thing we do is paraphrase. Here's what he did. The lover of education, he says, labors at first, but those labors end in profit. That was his wise saying, and we shall show our admiration in what follows. So, the root of education is bitter. He says that basically means the lover of education labors at first. The root is bitter. You have to work hard at first. But the fruit's sweet. That means the labors end in profit. You get something good out of it. So he paraphrased it. He just said it in a different way. All right, next up. Cause or reasons for the saying. Why would someone say, why would anyone say that education is hard at first, but its fruit is sweet? He's going to tell us. The lovers of education are enrolled with the leaders of education. In other words, students are signed up with teachers. You're the lovers of education. I'm the leader of education. Whom it is fearful to approach, though to desert them is foolish. Fear always waits on boys, both when they are present and in anticipation. From teachers the attendants take over, fearful to behold, more fearful when inflicting punishment. Fear precedes the experience, and punishment follows on fear. What the boys do wrong, they punish. What the boys do well, they take as a matter of course. So why are these students afraid of their teacher? Mm-hmm. And what kind of punishment do you think?
Probably like beating.
They were beaten. It was very popular to beat students in the ancient world, and honestly, in the Middle Ages. My mother still tells a story that her first grade teacher slapped her across the face, fourth grade teacher, and knocked her glasses off. This would never, although my mother has been known to say things that weren't totally accurate. She will never watch this, so it's fine for me to say it. But I've heard this story all my life, so I'm pretty sure it's close to accurate. So yes, so they're afraid. Fear. Why is the root of education bitter for them? Because they're afraid. And the people who lead them back and forth, the attendants, they'll punish them too if they step out of line. Okay, but he doesn't stop there. Fathers are harsher than attendants, examining their ways, telling them to make progress, viewing the marketplace with suspicion. And if punishment is needed, they take no account of human nature. But by these experiences, the boy, when he reaches adulthood, is crowned with virtue. All right, so I'm going to stop there because actually he goes into the next section here. So this is his reason. Why would this guy say, Socrates, well, education's rough, the root of education is bitter, but the fruits are sweet? Well, it's because you're beaten all the time when you're a student. But when you've mastered the information, you're an educated person. You're looked up to. You're noble. You're fine. You have a good mind. You have abilities that have been sharpened and shaped. Today, we would have to write that differently, wouldn't we? Because it is not our custom to beat students, because we've found out that beating them does not make them learn better. Plato, interestingly, has Socrates say that you ought not to ever beat students because nothing learned by compulsion ever sticks anyway. Nothing you're made to do under force really sinks in and becomes a part of you. You have to want it, right? You have to want it. Well, so sometimes if you're under enough compulsion, but if you're under beating level compulsion, the fear might drive out your ability to learn, if you know what I mean. If I was terrified, so there's a happy medium, we might say. Okay, now it says the next is a contrast. What would happen if you do the opposite?
Like they wouldn't pay attention.
Mm-hmm. So yes. So here's how I'm going to start in that same paragraph where I left off. But if someone, because he fears these things, flees from his teachers, absconds from his parents, avoids his attendants, he is utterly deprived of eloquence. Along with his fear, he has set aside eloquence. If you do the opposite, if you don't undergo that bitter root, you don't learn what he thinks is one of the most important things, eloquence. All these sayings swayed Isocrates' judgment when he called the root of education bitter. Does that make sense to everybody? So what have we done so far? This is the saying. This guy's awesome. He said it. Here's why he would say such a thing. Here's what happens if you don't listen to it and do the opposite. All right. Next up, it says a comparison. Let's look at his comparison. For just as those who work the land laboriously sow the seed in the earth and gather the crops with greater joy, in the same way, those who strive for education by their toil acquire the subsequent renown. It was one sentence. That section was one sentence. What is it like? It's like farming. It's like farming. Farmers work really hard to plant their crops, but then they harvest the crops and they can sell them and they have food to eat for the winter and extra money. Okay. Next up is an example. Now, you might say, isn't that an example, Mrs. Ferguson? No.
Maybe a relevant example.
Comparison is hypothetical. Example is a concrete person. It could be a fictional person, all right? But it's a specific. Comparison is, just like farmers in general. So let's look at what his example is. He said, consider Demosthenes' career. Some of you might remember Demosthenes. Some of you have talked about him. He's a Greek orator, and he stuttered, and he had asthma, some sort of weak chest issue, but he really wanted to be a great orator. So he spent tons of time. He shaved half his head so that he wouldn't go out in public because he was embarrassed. So he'd just stay home and study. And then he would put rocks in his mouth. So he would learn to move his tongue around the rocks and speak more clearly. And then he would go down by the seashore with the loud waves coming in, and he'd try to talk louder than the waves to develop his ability to emote, to project. And he became the greatest orator of Greece. So, but it was hard work. So that's his example. Let's hear how he says it. Consider Demosthenes' career, which was more devoted to toil than that of any orator and more glorious than that of any. So great was his commitment that he even deprived his head of its adornment, thinking the best adornment is that from virtue, and he devoted to toil what others devote to enjoyment. So, comparison is just hypothetical, kind of a simile or a metaphor. Example is someone who actually lived it, who did the hard thing and then reaped the benefits. Okay, next section, testimony. Is there someone who says something similar? I love this. For this reason, one must admire Hesiod, who said that the road to virtue is hard, but the summit easy. Expressing the same wise judgment as Isocrates, for what Hesiod represented as a road, Isocrates calls the route. Both disclose the same opinion, though in different words. He says, Hesiod, the poet, he said basically the same thing. He said that when you're trying to be virtuous, the road's hard, but when you get to the top, it becomes easy. He said basically that's the same thing. That's what testimony is. Somebody who said basically the same thing. And then we simply wrap it up with an epilogue. Those who consider these points must admire Isocrates for his outstandingly wise saying on education. The end.
Yay.
I want you, down below that, compose a crea on the statement of Amasis, King Amasis of Egypt. He said, when archers need to use their bows, they string them tightly. But when they have finished using them, they relax them. And if you say, I don't know what he's talking about, we'll look at it together. But it's explained in that paragraph, exactly what he's talking about and what he means, so there's no question. All right, so that's what I want you to do. It does not have to be fancy. Your paragraphs don't have to be as long as Aphthonius's. If you don't have much to say about King Amasis of Egypt, you could say Amasis was the one who said it. You could also say Herodotus was the one who said it. Yes?
Yeah, it's hard to find anything good to say about Amasis. He's kind of not
Because
a
he
ruler.
rebelled against his, yeah. But you can try. Or you can just say Herodotus said this. And Herodotus is awesome because he wrote the first history and he's a super smart guy.
Yeah.
Something. Okay.
Very
That's fine. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes.
We gotta add it. We need to
I would like you to add, so we don't get out of the habit. P1, P2, and anaphora.
Don't hate me.
No, I was going to say it.
I'm sorry.
She did not blow anything up because it was on the tip of my tongue.
I forgot to label the parallelism between anaphora and metaphysics.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I try to always remember. Everybody, do try to remember, because someday there's going to be a teacher who's going to look at it and just say, "Yeah, you failed this paper. You didn't follow directions." I'm just warning you that this may happen to you someday. But Mrs. Ferguson always took them, and so I feel like I'm teaching you bad habits. So, but thank you but you remembered now. So your goal for next week will be to remember before you hand it in.
Yep.
Awesome, awesome. All right, let's take a look at Herodotus. I told you I find him a little quirky. Why might I have said that? What is there about Herodotus's style of writing that what is his method? Yeah.
It's kind of like he's
Nate,
talking
Noah.
to you, right?
Yeah, a little casual at times.
He's very casual and conversational. Does he follow the road from point A to point B very straight and directly?
Not quite.
I-
Kind of goes off the beaten path a little.
I think Gabriel just rolled his eyes at Herodotus.
No, I was like, I didn't know.
I'm teasing you because you wouldn't be the first. If you did, you were just like, oh my gosh. Herodotus, hello, this is the topic. But reading Herodotus is a lot, this is the events right here. And this is Herodotus. Let me come back. Let's talk about this for a while. Oh, and remember where we are. And oh, let's go over here. This is reading Herodotus. This is why it can be difficult, because you think, what in the world is going on? Why are we talking about this guy hiding behind the door, watching the king's wife naked? What? What is this story even about? But he always brings it back. So hopefully, if there's a question about that, as we work through it together, I can weave it back. But also, the paragraph summaries in the margins kind of tell you, and sometimes the footnotes will say, suddenly it'll say, and this was the same man who blah, blah, blah. And in the footnote it'll say, this picks up the story that we left off in paragraph whatever. And it helps us a little bit. Yes, I really, thank you. I see all these landmark Herodotuses, and I love it. This is a whole series, and I actually just bought myself one. It was the Campaigns of Alexander the Great, with all the maps and everything. I haven't read it yet. I'm so excited. I got it with my birthday money. We're going to read another one of these, the Peloponnesian War one. And as I mentioned just in passing before we dive in, you do not have to look at every footnote or look at every map. Please do not feel obliged. But sometimes it's just helpful. Where are we in the world and what are we talking about? And then you can picture it a little better. Okay, what does Herodotus say is his purpose in writing this book? Why? Why? Oh, why?
Why are we going so far off
Yes.
the path? I got no answer.
Gabriel.
Like famous deeds from just like fitting into history.
Yes.
Yeah, if you don't have anything written about them, they disappear.
And imagine how many notable things we know very little about. Maybe we know nothing about because nobody wrote it down. Now, this was a highly notable event. The clash between Greece and Persia is one of the renowned wars in the entire history of the world, and one of the most decisive battles in history. In other words, set the stage for the rest of history, changed history. So he was right. This is an earth-shattering event that he's going to write about. He says, may the great and wonderful deeds, some brought forth by the Hellenes, others by the barbarians, some by the Greeks and some by the Persians.
Very specific.
not go unsung. Very specific and very fair. He says, I'm going to tell you great deeds, not just that the Greeks did, but some amazing things that the Persians did too. I don't want this to be lost. He said, I don't want them to go unsung, as well as the causes that led them to make war on each other. Because where do we start when we want to write a history? Do you ever think about that? Say you want to write a history of the United States. Where do you start? Okay, but what caused that? Why would they do that? Somebody might read your book and say, well, why would they want to do that?
They go all the way back to England.
Yeah, you'd have to go back to leaving England. You'd have to at least go back to leaving England because, well, why did they end up there in the first place? But then, well, why did they need to leave England? And then it's like, oh, now it's the Reformation. And then it's very hard to find a starting place when you write a history if you don't start at the very beginning of the history of the world and give enough information. So Herodotus doesn't say, I'm going to go back to the very beginning, although he does go pretty far back sometimes. But especially I let you skip most of book 2. It's the entire history of Egypt that you skipped. Also all the animals that live in Egypt. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I just decided it wasn't important for you to know, go all the way back to the beginning of Egypt. But I feel for Herodotus because everything's connected to the thing that came before. And it's very hard to choose a place to begin. So this is a problem for a history. And remember, this is the first guy who said, you know what? I'm going to write this big thing that happened down so nobody forgets. So great deeds don't go unsung, and so everyone can know what led up to this. Now, here's another question for you guys. You're sitting down to write your history. Okay, let's not make it the Revolutionary War, because Herodotus lived not very long after these events. Probably he was closer to these events than we are to World War II. Let's make it Vietnam. But we're all vaguely at least familiar with the Vietnam War, okay? You're writing a history of the Vietnam War. Where are you going to go for sources? What are you going to do to gather information on this history?
Probably go to somebody that's fought in that war.
Okay. Eyewitness testimony. That would be huge, and we're still in a time when we can do this. My father-in-law was in Vietnam. He did not see combat. He was, a radio guy, an electronics guy. So he was not ever, as far as I know, he was not in physical danger. My husband's uncle recently died, and apparently he was in combat, and he had nightmares the rest of his life. He was a very troubled man. So this is within our grasp to talk to people. Eyewitness testimony. What else might you do? What else might you do? You're setting out to write this epic history of the Vietnam War. Oh, before we go there, can we talk about the eyewitness testimony? Well, you're gonna talk to people who were there. Are you only going to talk to Americans?
Yeah, no.
Are you going to talk to some Vietnamese people? Yeah, if we want it to be fair. How are you going to know who to trust? What if two people tell a story of something but they tell it differently?
Mix them together.
We could mix them together.
Or you could have two different arms.
I could write the same story twice, and I could say, according to so-and-so, this is what happened. However, according to so-and-so, this is the way it went down. But you'd have to make a choice. Either I'm going to choose one, or I'm going to put them both, or like Emma said, doing a mashup is completely justified, but you'd never be totally sure if the parts you're mashing up that you chose are the right parts.
You don't trust me, I don't know diddly squat about the war.
No, Emma, but the person you interviewed might not know. You see, that's the problem. That frustration is the problem that you feel when you have a history. So, okay, that's the difficulty we have with eyewitness testimony. What else might you do? You're going to write a particular battle in the Vietnam War. What might you want to check out?
Maybe the site where it happened.
I want to go where it happened. Okay, where's the jungle? Where's the mountain? Where's the ditch? Where's the water? I want to see what it looks like so that I can make sure the stories that I was told are accurate. If somebody says, and we charged up the hill, and then you go there and there's no hill. Okay, well, maybe the hill's been removed. Maybe that person was never there. Unclear. Right. So, last question. When you write your history, do you think it would be better for you to be totally honest in your history and say, you know what, this is what I heard, but I didn't really see it. I heard there's a hill there, but I'm going to tell you flat out, I didn't check this out.
You might not get a lot of friends that way.
Well, you might not get friends, but would people trust you more?
Maybe.
Maybe. Would you be fair to your reader if you warned them, hey, I saw this. I didn't see this, I just heard about this.
Yes.
That would be what do we want to say, academically and intellectually honest. Well, here's some things I notice about Herodotus. I'm going to bounce around a little bit and just get through this. First of all, I know you all have your book. I'm going to tell you what page I'm on, but you do not have to look them up, okay? This is just a thing. I'm on page 5 in paragraph 3. That is not true. Just a second.
Book 1, paragraph 3.
Yeah, just a second. Page 5. Okay. It's the very last sentence on page 5. He says, and so resting on my knowledge. Oh, okay. I'm going to read that whole paragraph. The one that starts, it's paragraph 5, but it's sentence 3, starting at sentence 3 on page 5. Okay. These are the stories. These are the stories told by the Persians and Phoenicians. I myself have no intention of affirming that these events occurred thus or otherwise. But I do know who was the first man to begin unjust acts against the Hellenes. I shall describe him, and then proceed with the rest of my story, recounting cities both lesser and greater, since many of those that were great long ago have become inferior, and some that are great in my own time were inferior before. And so, resting on my knowledge that human prosperity never remains constant, I shall make mention of both without discrimination. All right, he says, these are the stories told by the Persians and Phoenicians. I have no intention of affirming that these events occurred this way or otherwise. But I'm just going to tell you what they said. This is going to be his attitude. Now, I wrote a whole list. Don't bother to look all this up because I'm going to skip heavily around here. But I'm just going to read some things that he says. He says, such are the stories told about how the children were raised. In another place, he says, I could learn nothing from anyone else. However, I did learn as much as I could by traveling to the city and seeing it for myself. So we knew he traveled. Since I wished to know something definite about all this from any source I could find, I sailed to Tyre in Phoenicia. And he did research there.
That's awesome.
He is awesome. He says about Hesiod and Homer, he says, I believe they lived no more than 400 years before my own time. Of the claims stated here, I heard the former one directly from the priestess at Dodona. The latter one concerning Hesiod and Homer is my own opinion. Made it very clear. I heard this from someone, but that other thing, that's just what I think. Up to this point, what I have said about Egypt has been the result of my own observation, judgment, and research. But from here on, I am going to repeat the words of the Egyptians, just as I heard them. Although again, I shall on occasion add something of my own observation. All right, I've got more of those, but I'm not, you get the idea. Herodotus, is very upfront. I traveled here and I saw this, or, this is hearsay. But here's the problem with Herodotus. He also says hippopotami, have tails like trees. Hippopotami do not have tails like trees. They have little itty bitty tails, little swishy tails. So this is the problem with Herodotus. We read things, and we're going to talk about some more of this today. Okay, Herodotus, did you ever see a hippo? But he gives ample evidence that he traveled all over Egypt. And it is possible to go to Egypt and not see a hippo. But why would he say that? And he's just enigmatic because he seems to know so much. And he makes a point of telling us about all his research and all his travels. And then he tells us things like that. Dude, hippopotami do not have tails like trees. Yes.
Maybe just like do a hippopotami.
Yeah,
Just add it along.
maybe.
He's like, oh, look at that.
Look at that, look at your tail. I don't know. The reason I want to talk about some of these things with Herodotus is because he starts the ball rolling on history, and we're going to read another history this year. Some of you have read other histories in the past. If you stay with me in future years, you'll be reading more histories. And these are good things to ask ourselves. How does he know that? Where does he get his information? Was he there? Did he hear this and see this? Who did he talk to? Did he talk to only people on one side, or did he talk? These are good things to ask ourselves. Herodotus seems to be upfront even when he's a little odd. He's thorough, if nothing else, though. Okay, second question. For what event do the Persians blame the Greeks for hostilities between the two people? I'm going to give it to Emma.
Wasn't it like Helen getting stolen and Troy getting burned to the ground?
Yes, Trojan War. The Trojan War. But of course he can't start with that. Herodotus says to say, all right, Persian authorities claim that the Phoenicians were responsible for the dispute because they landed in Greece at Argos and they stole a woman and took her back to Phoenicia. And then he said, then the Greeks came to Phoenicia and stole Europa. This is the Europa and the bull story, except in Herodotus' version, no. Zeus didn't turn into a bull. They just snatched her. And Io didn't run away from Juno and get turned into a cow or whatever. The Phoenicians came and snatched her. And then they went back to Phoenicia and snatched a woman. And by snatch, it could be with the woman's permission, but not with her family's permission. Yeah, and she's like, big thumbs up on that. And then the Greeks went to the Black Sea, the Euxine Sea, and took Medea. Jason went up there with the Golden Fleece episode and took the king's daughter Medea and ran off with her. So,
Didn't she want to go?
yes, but it doesn't matter because they didn't ask permission.
Stupid man.
And then it's culminated by the Greeks going over there and taking, or the Trojans going over there and taking Helen, right? So what's the score? Phoenicians snatch Io, Greeks snatch Europa, Greeks snatch Medea, Asians, Trojans snatch Helen. The score's even. It says up until this point, before Helen, there had been abductions only from each other, but after this the Hellenes were largely responsible for offenses, for they began to make war on Persia before their enemies made war on Europe. So the Greeks went to the war, though. There might have been women snatching back and forth, but the score was even. The Greeks, they took an army over there. He says, now the Persians think that the abduction of women is certainly an act only unjust men would perform. Yet once they have been abducted, it is senseless to make a fuss over seeking vengeance. It is the way of sensible people to have no concern for abducted women. It is quite obvious that the women would not have been abducted if they had not been compliant. In other words, if they hadn't wanted to go. I have another translation of this, and this is how the other translator says it. Now, as for the carrying off of women, it is the deed, they say, of a rogue, but to make a stir about such a one as carried off argues a man a fool. Just deal with it. They carried her off, big whoop. But the Greeks had to make a war. So, as Emma said, this is the origin of their hostility. So, in other words, Herodotus has to figure out why would the peoples of Asia, the Persians, hate the Greeks so much. It goes all the way back to the Trojan War. They still have a grudge. All right. And then this is the point where he says, what I read earlier, this is what the Persians and the Phoenicians say. I don't know, but I can tell you the first person who began unjust acts against the Hellenes. This is the guy that Solon met. It was Croesus. Croesus. That's how I always heard it said. All right. So Herodotus begins, this is what it says in the paragraph on the side. Herodotus begins the story of Croesus by recounting the history of Lydia, the first Asiatic country to conquer the Hellenes. Great. So we're going to get back to Croesus in a little while, but now he's got to tell you the entire history of Lydia. So what do we need to remember? We need to remember that. Do you still have that map?
Yeah. Still not very yes.
It's okay. Oh, awesome, awesome. Okay. Back to our map. Do you remember the whole, we said this in an outline, the sending out of colonies. That at one point they started sending out, and a lot of these colonies landed, were settled over here. So along the coast, Troy's up here, along the coast of what's today Turkey, there's a lot of Greek cities. This is Lydia. This is where Croesus, Sardis is here. All right. So that's why he says these are Hellenes, these are Greeks, because they're colonies. These Ionian Greeks, as he calls them. All right. So he gives us the history of Lydia, which I'm not going to recount.
Yay.
However, he does tell us how Croesus's great-great-grandpa got to be king. This is the guy who thought his wife was just so gorgeous that he had to trick his servant Gyges into hiding and seeing her take off her clothes. And he's like, King, I'm not going to do that. Oh, yeah, you are. You are. Well, I'll hide you. It's fine. It's totally fine. All right. In our version, it says, page turned on me. The king used to tell his favorite among his bodyguards, Gyges, not only about serious matters, but especially about the beauty of his wife, and with extravagant praise. It was fated that things would turn out badly for Candules. So my other translation says something like, and he had decided his wife was the most beautiful woman in the world, and then it says, this fancy had strange consequences, that his wife was the most beautiful. My son is fond of quoting this. He sometimes just say, this fancy had strange consequences. He loved that line. And she found out, of course, you remember the story, and she said, okay, you got two choices, kill yourself or kill my husband. But this was a disgrace to me, and I'm not putting up with it. Somebody's going to pay. And you get to pick who it is. And of course, he decided to live. And Gyges was told by the oracle at Delphi, the retribution would come from the Heraclids to the fourth descendant of Gyges. The fourth descendant. Which brings us up to Croesus, who's the fourth descendant.
Finally.
Yes. Now, Solon. We talked about Solon last week, the Athenian lawgiver, and he gave laws to the Athenians, and then he said, you have to promise not to change anything for 10 years. And I'm going traveling. And he went various places, and in the stories, he visited Croesus. And so what lesson, I asked you, did Solon try to teach Croesus? Or what did Croesus claim about himself? What was it, Emma?
He claimed that he was the most fortunate person alive.
Yeah. Solon, have you ever met, who's the most fortunate person you ever met? Who's the most blessed by the gods person you ever met? And of course he thought, me? It's obviously me. And Solon said, oh, I knew this guy. He had a good family and just the right amount of money, not enough that he'd have to beg, but not that he'd get too proud. And then he died well fighting for his country. Croesus. All right, well, who's second? Oh, I know these two boys, and their mom was a priestess, and she had to travel on a cart led by oxen, but the oxen didn't get there in time. So the two boys hooked themselves up to the cart, and like, we'll take you, Mom. And so they took her, and she said, oh, look at my wonderful boys. I pray to the goddess to give them the best blessing. And so they just went into the temple, and they just fell asleep and died peacefully in their sleep with no worry. At this point, Croesus is thinking, you're an idiot. Solon, hello, look around you. What was Solon's response? Why didn't he say, Croesus, you are so the most fortunate man in the world? Does anybody remember? What is it?
No one could be judged the most fortunate man till you're dead.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know. Things might look good now. They might not stay good. On the flip side, somebody might be doing very poorly, and they might have a change in fortune, and they might end their lives wonderfully. So, after our little Gyges and his children detour, we come back to Croesus, right? And Croesus and his dad had captured those Greek cities. The Lydians were ruling them. Croesus was ruling Greeks. Does that make sense? And Croesus got it into his mind that he wanted to not have these Persians, these neighboring Persians who were getting stronger and stronger under their King Cyrus, coming at him. So he sent messages to various oracles. Oh, hold on, I am actually looking for something in particular that I don't think, oh, here it is. I brought pictures. This is our art. I brought photographs. This is what is left of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. I'm standing at these pillars. This was the temple. This is what it looks like. Look out over the mountains. This is the place where Croesus sent messengers. And they stood here and said, should I attack Persia? And does anybody remember, what did the oracle tell Croesus? This is a very famous story in history. What was it, Noah?
Destroy a great nation.
You will destroy a great empire. If you go to war against the Persians, a great empire will be destroyed. It's like, yeah. And he just never paused to ask, and which empire? Would that be mine or his? Should I ask that question? So this is where he went. I brought just a second to see if I have any. Come on. No, I don't have any. Not big enough to show you. Yes.
Well, didn't Croesus Croesus do this like test like, with all the oracles, like go up to them, ask them what he was doing, and then he would ask the one he thought was the most worthy of the patient.
Yes. And he was
I
doing
found that
something.
story really
Yeah, he was doing weird. He was cooking a turtle and something else in a bronze pot with a bronze lid. And at that particular moment, and Delphi wasn't the only one that told him right. There was another one too, and he decided those were the right ones.
But that story was fun.
So he gave gifts to. I didn't bring my picture of that. After you go up the hill from here, there are buildings and they're the treasuries of various cities. Most of them are gone. But the treasury of the Athenians is still there, and that's where they, if you sent gifts to Apollo, that's where they stored them. It says in a list of other of Croesus's offerings, tripods and golden cows, and it says, and a large golden shield at the temple of Athena Pronea at Delphi. These still exist in my time, but some of his other gifts have been lost. This is the temple of Athena Pronea at Delphi. This is down the hill from that one. It's got this lovely, it was round, and only part of it is left. This is just this part of the round temple. Just as you can see, it's just stones left. But this is where he sent. This used to have the large golden shield of Croesus here, but of course it's been stolen and melted down or whatever centuries, millennia ago. Anyway, these places you can still visit. They still exist. Okay. That was the excitement for today. So why, I alluded to this, but why does Herodotus say that Croesus wants to attack Persia? I found two reasons. But if you found one, I'm pleased. Just boredom? That's not the right answer, by the way. Why, Noah? What's one of them?
I don't know if that's like what you're thinking about, but he said the gods made him do it. He talked to the person.
He says the gods made him do it, but okay, did the gods agree with that? No.
Apollo.
Yeah, he said, look, first of all, you should have asked. But let's look at where here, I have both of them marked here. It's 3. Oh, actually, I don't have that one marked. But you're right, Noah. He sends back, and after Cyrus captures him, he says, I want to send my shackles to the temple and say, is this how you treat all your suppliants? No, thanks a bunch, Apollo. And Apollo answered, look, you should have asked. But also, it had to happen because...
Isn't it that like the fated destiny is impossible to avoid even for God?
Yes, because you're the 4th generation from Gyges, the guy who killed his master after seeing his wife. And so you're the one who's going to pay it back now. So it's destined. So this is true. I noted in one place, in one paragraph 46 on page 25, it says he learned that the Persian Cyrus, son of Cambyses, had destroyed the empire of the Mede, Astyages, and the power of the Persians was steadily growing. And you don't ever want your neighbor getting more powerful, yes. But later it says, of course he coveted more land, and he was entirely confident that the oracle had predicted victory, but he also wanted to punish Cyrus on behalf of Astyages, his brother-in-law.
And here we go again.
And here we go. The story of Astyages, his brother-in-law. And we skipped how did the oracle mislead Croesus? And what reason does the oracle get? Yeah, I'm sorry, I blew that up.
It's okay.
Apologize. Okay, but now there's a long way before I blow anything up. Who is this Astyages? Well, you might remember that, oh, I don't even remember. Astyages married into, here, where does it take us to? He doesn't go there yet. Where does he start with Astyages? Croesus, so on.
62.
What, 62?
Yes.
Okay,
Astyages
thank you.
sent us the ark.
Okay, here we go.
I think.
Yeah. Okay, so he was related by marriage to Croesus, and then he has a grandson, and of course this is the oracle, right? And so we got to kill the kid.
We're going all the way over here.
Yeah, and by the way, yes, how was Cyrus's birth and infancy? Sounds similar to other mythological stories.
Well, I know many of the mythological heroes were born from like kings and were often like sought out or try to get or basically marked for murder because they didn't want them inheriting the kingdom,
Yeah.
killing them or ending their rule.
Yeah. But they're always found by someone, right? And
Yeah,
raised
shepherds
by
apparently.
shepherds. Shepherds out there. What else you got, Gabriel?
Like the shepherds taking in the royal baby that they're sometimes oblivious about.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
In normal life, and they find out who they really are.
And then the one that takes in Cyrus, it says his name was Mithridates, and he lived with his wife, a fellow slave whose name in Greek would have been Kino or bitch, and in this case it means female dog. I mean, they literally mean the actual meaning of that word, female dog. But it was speko in the Median language, for the Medes call a kino a speko. And so later he says, you know, because his foster mother her name was Dog, they gave it out that he had been nursed by wild dogs or something. Livy says the exact same thing about Romulus and Remus. He says, you know, they say that this wolf came and took care of him, but I am of the opinion that this shepherd took him in, and his wife's name was Wolf or something that meant wolf, and then they said, oh, and you know, they were taken care of by the wolf. But it was actually a lady whose name was that. It's the same story, which kind of makes me a little suspicious about at least one of those stories. I'm going to say, how many times does that happen? I don't know. Yes, so Astyages finds out that Harpagos, the guy that he put in charge of getting rid of the kid, did not get rid of the kid, and then cooks Harpagos' son and feeds it to him again. Not again, the same son.
Oh my god.
Which,
Again,
you pointed to your thing. So,
Sorry,
yeah, no. So this is, why did Harpagos turn against the Medes? Yeah, because Astyages cooked his son and ate it.
What's with these kings cooking
Well, no,
their
he didn't.
sons?
Cooked his son and fed it to him. Didn't cook his son and eat it.
Why are we always cooking people?
I
Eating
don't
human
know.
flesh?
Anyway, and so Harpagos turned against him. Now, this guy's related by marriage to Croesus, the guy who then Cyrus grows up, right? Let me, before I blow up any more questions. Okay, I'm not going to blow up anymore. Cyrus grows up, and Harpagos starts sending him secret messages. First of all, Cyrus is outed. They discover who he is. And his grandpa says, well, that's fine, but I think I'm going to send you to go live with your mom and your dad. By the way, your dad is Persian. Your mom's a Mede, my daughter. Your dad's a Persian. I wanted to make sure he wasn't pure blood Mede, because then he wouldn't be eligible for the kingship, right? So go away to your parents. And Harpagos starts sending him messages. Dude, are you going to let your grandpa get away with this? He's a terrible, man. You know, you should be the ruler. You should be the next ruler. And you know he's not going to give you anything. He's just getting you out of the way. And he wins Cyrus over. So Cyrus comes back. And Herodotus very humorously tells us that Astyages stupidly decides to put Harpagus in charge of the army. The guy whose son you killed and fed him, hey, why don't you be in charge of the army? The first chance he gets, he's just going to defect to the other side and bring a bunch of people with him, which he does.
You think they're not gonna revolt when you feed them their own child?
No, but they are. Keep that in mind. Just A, don't do it. B, if you do, there will be consequences. Just know this. So we followed why in the world would Croesus do, well, also his brother was ousted by Cyrus, his brother-in-law, not his brother by marriage, Astyages, the grandpa. And so I want to come avenge him because his throne has been taken away from him. So he's got that reason as well. All right, but before we get there, we take another detour. Because Croesus wants some help, right? So Croesus decides to, an oracle says that he should get some aid. And you should reach out to the foremost powers, and those were Sparta and Athens. So he sends messengers to Sparta. Sparta does not really respond. Sparta's busy, he says, with fighting. But he says, Croesus learned that those in Attica, the Greeks in Attica, were currently being oppressed and divided in political strife by Pisistratus, son of Hippocrates, who was ruling Athens. Athens as a tyrant at the time. Okay, now we're going to hear the whole story of what's happening in Athens when Croesus reaches out. What is it? Okay, Pisistratus.
That's a name.
That is his name. By what trick did Pisistratus become tyrant of Athens for the first time? Gabriel. I love this trick.
That he'd been attacked and he needed bodyguards.
Yeah.
And those bodyguards helped him take over.
Yeah. Except he hadn't been attacked. He just had somebody beat him up.
Yeah.
Hey, beat me up. Beat me up so it looks really good. And then I'm going to go and say, oh, people beat me up. I need bodyguards. I need protection. And they give him protection, and then there's his own personal army. Nice. Now, I don't know why I said, how did he do it for the third time? The second time was the humorous, but he did do it 3 times. So basically, whatever else you answered for this question goes. What's another thing he did?
Well, for the third time, didn't he just very bluntly go and raid the city?
Yes, which is why I don't think I meant to be third time. I think I meant the second time. Yeah, he just basically invaded the city. But the second time, it's much more interesting and fun. Grace, what is it? You're smiling.
He made somebody, a woman, dress up as yes, he is supposed to be king.
Yeah, and I love what Herodotus has to say about this. By the way, I don't know if you noticed that often at the top of the page, but more often by the paragraphs, it has a date. So at this one it says circa, that's what the C means, circa, around 561. So it's about 70 years before the war kicks in. It says, yeah, so he got this beautiful woman named Phaia. She was almost 6 feet tall and strikingly beautiful. He dressed her up in a full set of armor, placed her in a chariot, and showed her how to project a distinguished appearance, and then drove her into the city. And then he sent heralds ahead to proclaim, Athenians, hail Pisistratus and welcome him joyfully, since Athena herself is bringing him home to her own Acropolis, honoring him above all men.
Wonder how Athena felt about that.
I hope they made a movie
Yes.
about that.
Here, just a second. I'm looking for Herodotus's. He's got a. Oh, here we go. In order to help him return to power, they contrived the silliest scheme I've ever heard of, particularly silly in this case. For long ago, the Hellenes distinguished themselves from barbarians by their superior cleverness and freedom from naive stupidity. Moreover, they carried out this scheme against the Athenians, who were at that time reputed to surpass all other Hellenes in intellect. Herodotus says, how in the world did they believe this? It's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
I think that's what we all think.
But apparently they believed it. So they brought Pisistratus in. And I told you, this was on my outline, that I said we'd meet Pisistratus. Pisistratus is ruled from 546 to 528. He purified the island of Delos. So Pisistratus ruled as tyrant of the Athenians. Although some Athenians had fallen in battle against him and others fled into exile from their own country. And so Croesus learned that the Athenians were being oppressed in this way at the time.
Yeah, we're back.
So now we're back. We're back. Croesus found out, okay, that's what's going on. But the Spartans, he had heard, had just emerged from great difficulties and were now waging war victoriously against the Tegeans. And so we go on a little Sparta trip now. And the Spartans are conquering the main part of the Peloponnese. I am not going to dig into that, but it's another. The Spartans, it says, were pleased when the Lydians arrived and happily took oaths of friendship with him. So he's got the Spartans on his side when he rebels. Doesn't do him any good because they don't get there till it's too late, but whatever, he tried. All right. Do I want to read? Okay, yeah, I'm going to read this. While he was preparing for war against Persia, this is on page 41, a Lydian named Sandanus, who was considered a sage even before this, achieved greater fame among the Lydians for the advice he now gave to Croesus. Sire, he said, you are preparing for war against the sort of men who wear leather trousers and leather for all their other garments as well. They eat not as much as they want, but as much as they have, since their land is rugged. Moreover, they have no wine, but drink water instead. They have no figs for dessert, nothing else good to eat. Now, if you should conquer them, what will you take from these people who have nothing at all? And then again, if they were to conquer you, think of how much you will lose. As soon as they taste our good life, they will never give it up, and you will never get rid of them. I, for my part, give thanks to the gods for not putting it into the minds of the Persians to make war on the Lydians. These words did not persuade Croesus, though it was true indeed that at that time the Persians really did lack luxuries and good things. This is good advice, but Croesus doesn't take it. All right, as you remember, he's captured. He yells from his pyre where they're going to, oh, Solon, you were right. I thought I was so blessed, and look at me now. And they bring him down, and Cyrus says, hey, this is a good story. I like it. You're a smart guy. I'm going to keep you alive and take you with me on my travels. All right? So he heads to the north now, to the Scythians, up around the Black Sea, for no good reason, and takes Cyrus with him. And we, I've got to go way forward now. Page 102. We hear a lot about the Scythians, because he likes to tell us everything about everything. He tells us about their clothing. He tells us, I've skipped over the taking of Babylon. Sorry. Actually, I should not skip over the taking of Babylon before he heads north, because after a very long, about past queens of Babylon, the one who diverted the river and built the bridge across the river that flows through the middle of Babylon, and then had herself buried in the stone thing above and said, only open this tomb and get this loot if you need it. And then Darius opened it, and there was just a note saying, if you weren't so stinking greedy, you wouldn't go opening people's tombs. So after we hear all of this story, we find out that Cyrus uses a very similar plan to that queen. He diverts the river that flows through Babylon. It says, Persians were posted at the places where the river goes through. When the Persians posted saw the river Euphrates drop to about the level of mid-thigh for a man, they entered Babylon, according to Cyrus's plan. Now, if the Babylonians had been able to surmise what Cyrus was doing, they could have allowed the Persians to enter the city by the riverbed and then destroyed them utterly. For they could have locked all the little gates leading to the river, and by climbing onto the ramparts, could have caught the Persians there as if they'd been so many fish in a barrel. But as it was, the Persian maneuver took them by surprise. Because the city is so immense, its inhabitants say that when the Babylonians at the edges of the city were taken, those at the center were unaware of their capture, because they happened to be celebrating a festival at that moment. And so they sang and danced and enjoyed themselves until they found out all too well what had happened. That is how Babylon fell to the Persians.
Why does this always happen?
This,
People are celebrating.
people are celebrating, but I can tell you a lot more about that celebration. Once upon a time, the Babylonian king was celebrating, and he was celebrating with his peeps and having a grand old time. And he said, hey, I remember, Dad or Grandpa, depending on who you asked, went to the land where those Hebrews live, and they had a big temple, and they knocked down the temple, and we took all the dishes out of the temple. Go bring those dishes. We're going to drink out of the golden dishes from the temple. And they did. And suddenly, a hand appeared with no arm, just a hand, no body, writing a message on the wall. You remember the story? It's in the book of Daniel. And nobody could read it. And they said, wait, I know a guy. And they brought Daniel, and he was old at that point. And he said, you have been weighed and found wanting. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And it says, and that very night, the city fell. That's it. That's Herodotus's version of Daniel, right, of what happened. It's the handwriting on the wall night. It's the same festival. They're celebrating a festival to their gods, and they bring out the stuff from the temple in Jerusalem. Bad idea. Okay, so then they turn north, and then we hear tremendous descriptions of the Scythians. I'm going to read one in particular because it amuses me. They've also discovered other trees bearing fruit, which they use when they gather into groups. They sit in a circle around the fire and throw this fruit into it, inhaling the fumes as the fruit burns. Then they become intoxicated by the vapors, just as the Hellenes become intoxicated with wine. They add more of the fruit to the fire and become even more intoxicated until they reach a point where they stand up and begin to sing and dance.
You can't drink wine.
Some sort of hallucinogenic drug that they burn and smoke.
What?
I don't know. This just amuses me. There's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, and this is a good example of that. So he's heading north to Scythia, and the Ganges River is in his way. And why was Cyrus angry with the river, and what did he do about it?
He lost his horse.
Good horse.
It was a good horse. That was a good horse.
So he divided it between
Yes.
inlets.
Yes. 360 channels. You are never, ever, ever going to take anybody's horse or anything else again. Yeah. So I asked you, and this is not the first guy we're going to meet. I mean, this is the first guy. This is not the last guy that we're going to meet in this book, punishing natural features of the landscape.
Didn't we do that already in Alien?
Yeah, I feel like somebody punished an ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it,
when
it,
it-
it was Xerxes, I think.
Yeah, I think that was from the junior high class. It was. It's
Oh, yeah.
this. This is where we know about it from. But what kind of person does that? What kind of person is Cyrus?
He seems easily irritable.
I mean, is he reasonable?
I mean, yeah.
That wasn't a reasonable decision.
That's not reasonable. Also, why is he attacking the Scythians? Partly because they're there. Partly because Herodotus informs us that the Scythians had come south some years before and rampaged and ruled the northern parts of the Persian holdings for about 20 years before they got driven out, and ostensibly in punishment for this. But so remember, he goes to the stream, and the Scythian, this group, is ruled by a woman. And she says, okay, here's the deal. Either you pick. We'll come to you across the river, you come to us. And Croesus tells him, you go to them. You go to them, and he does. And he's killed in battle. And she says to Croesus, well, you're bloodthirsty. Oh, you'll drink your fill. And the story is that she looked until she found his dead body and got a bag full of blood and stuck his head in it and said, there you go. Also, her son died in the battle, so she was grieving. And so book one ends. Yes, whew, yes. By just basically telling us more customs of the Scythians. But book two begins this way. When Cyrus died, the kingship was inherited by Cambyses. He was the son of Cyrus by Cassandane, daughter of Pharnaspes. Cassandane had died before Cyrus, and he was grieved for her. He grieved for her with great sorrow and ordered all his subjects to grieve for her too. As the son of this woman and Cyrus, Cambyses considered the Ionians and Aeolians as his slaves, whom he had inherited from his father. These Ionians and Aeolians are the Greeks living in Lydia. Right? Croesus, the Lydians had conquered them. Cyrus had conquered Croesus. But we read a very detailed account of how he tried to put native Lydians in charge, and then they just revolted, and then Cyrus had to come back and deal with it, and they wouldn't comply. Cambyses isn't going to mess with any of that at all. He's just like, you're my slaves, you're my subjects. I inherited you. That's his view of those Greeks living there. And then Herodotus says, and when he made his expedition to Egypt,
And here we go.
yes, he took with him these Hellenes who were under his rule along with the rest of his subjects. He forced those Greeks living in Lydia to join the army. I mean, the fighting age ones, not all of them, obviously. And so this, going to the last question I asked you, why is Herodotus writing this account of Egypt? And I just read it. When he made his expedition to Egypt, he took these Hellenes with him.
He's gonna conquer them.
It's next on the hit list for the Persians. What were you going to say, Gabriel? I'm sorry.
And I was also going to say, Egypt has like a lot to do with Greece as well. Like the two countries they have a lot of
They do.
conflicting parts in their histories.
They do. He talks about adopting the same gods and whatnot. But the important thing to remember is almost all of Book 2 is one of these. Right? Like Cambyses, dad died, Cyrus died, Cambyses recruits an army and he says, we're heading south, we're going to go take Egypt. And now Herodotus is going to tell us everything you ever wanted to know about Egypt. And maybe some things you didn't want to know, like hippopotami have tails like trees. Okay, I've said it a bunch of times. Who ruled the Persians after Cyrus died? Cambyses, his son. We'll go briefly through these. What time marking scheme does he say the Egyptians came up with? Gabriel. The calendar, dividing into 12 months. Awesome, considering we still do this, although they don't all have 30 days. Okay. And I went out in the desert, and the priest showed me the flying snakes, the skeletons of the flying snakes.
And there's another one of these.
Oh, okay. Now, I asked, what do you think about it? And then I asked you to read Job, chapter 39 in the two versions. What did you notice about the two versions?
Actually, I was reading, in my Bible, I don't think it lists the flying snakes.
Oh, it's not flying snakes in Job.
It's like a hawk, right?
No,
In
in
my
those.
version, it was an ox.
Okay,
In another version, it was a unicorn.
ox and unicorn. In the NIV, it calls it a wild ox. It says, "Can you lead the wild ox?" You know, with a rope or I don't know what it says. It's in that big long thing in Job. Do you know? Were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? Can you catch Leviathan with a fish hook? That thing. And in NIV, it translates it wild ox. In the King James, it calls it unicorn. I decided I was curious. I looked up the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, done in about 200 BC, considered the formative translation into Greek, because it was written in Hebrew. Monokeres, one horn. Monokeres. That's what they translated at 200 BC. Then I was trying to look in the Hebrew, and the last I could find out was, we don't know what this animal is. Some sort of wild ox, they said, but we don't know what this animal is. That was the bottom line. So here's why I brought this up. Why do you think that in the King James Version it says unicorn and in the NIV it says wild ox?
The one-horned unicorn thing makes sense. King James.
Mm-hmm. Why did they change? NIV is much newer. NIV is a very recent translation, right? So within the last 60 years. Why would they say in the King James a unicorn, and why would somebody say, no, we're going to call it a wild ox?
Because unicorns really exist.
Who says?
You know,
Well, I mean, dinosaurs could have existed.
Yeah?
in our Bible, the Vulgate, it said rhinoceros.
Mm-hmm. Which is also one horn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the, I don't know what it is, but Jesus' agony in the garden, he said, "Don't let the one-horned animal get me." Or, I don't know. Yeah, that's just total paraphrase, but he said something like that.
I'm wondering if they didn't call it unicorn because they said nobody believes in that anymore. But it's not, my point is, it's not a decision maybe made based on translations. It's a decision made on, yeah, but that's made up. Does that make sense to you guys? So then we meet Herodotus and the flying snakes. By the way, Numbers chapter 21, the Israelites sinned in the desert, big surprise. And it says they were bitten by fiery serpents. And then in Isaiah, it talks about flying serpents. Herodotus, here's all I have to say. Herodotus said, I went and saw the skeletons. Now, sometimes skeletons can be misleading. Because I saw it. And so this is an example of people who, Herodotus, he's just, makes stuff up. He's not believable. He talks about the phoenix. Now, do I really believe there's a bird that incinerates its own father on a pile? I really don't. But I just.
It's cool to hear. It's cool to hear.
I don't know how much we should just say, well, I don't believe anything this guy says because I don't believe that exists. Well, once upon a time, people would not have thought anything like a dinosaur ever existed. We have to remember that. I mean, we've been wrong about what exists or what has existed. I don't know. I'm tempted to give Herodotus the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, because I have to let you guys go, we will burn through the last couple. What does Herodotus believe was the true story of Helen? Yeah, Emma.
He thinks that she was left with the Egyptians when she and Paris sailed their men's name.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise the Trojans, after they had lost the war, they would have given her back. Or if they had any sense, they would have given them back right away.
Yeah, Herodotus is very matter of fact about this. He says, look, first of all, even Homer talks about them having stuff that they got on their trip there, that they picked up in Egypt, and also the fact that when she's drugging people, when Telemachus comes to visit in the Odyssey, like she got these drugs from the Egyptian lady when she was in Egypt. He said even Homer knows this. He said there is no way Priam would sit there and let his sons just die one after another. And he said even if he was married to Helen, he'd give her back. What kind of idiot, this is a paraphrase of Herodotus, but that's kind of the tone. What kind of idiot would sit there and let his city be destroyed and not just give her back, for crying out loud? He said, but when those messengers came, they said, we don't have her. And they were telling the truth. And they were, oh, yes, you do. Well, he said, that's how it really went down. In Herodotus's opinion, that's how it went down. And and Menelaus, who's delayed in Egypt on his way home, right? Because they broke into Troy and they, oh, she really isn't here. We told you, she's in Egypt. So he believes that was the real story. And this kind of absolves everybody of fault. Then Helen isn't really, I mean, it's unclear whether she went with him willingly, but, she stayed there waiting. According to Herodotus, a priest in Egypt found out that this impious, horrible thing had been done and said Paris had to leave and whatnot. Anyway, does Herodotus treat it as a true story? Would you say Herodotus, I mean, when he goes to this length to explain?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying this happened. I mean, he gave it as one of the causes as the main instigating cause, the snatching of Helen and the war. According to Herodotus, how was the Great Pyramid built? This was a very vague question, and as I looked it up, I thought, oh, that wasn't phrased very nicely at all for you guys, so I don't blame you. Yes, what did you put down, Emma?
Oh.
Did you put anything?
Yeah,
yes.
They were built it was built like a staircase, and they used devices. It kind of works like a crane, I think. They lifted stuff up.
To each level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they worked on the top ones first, and then the bottoms last.
Mm-hmm. For the polishing. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So after I read this again, I was conflicted because I wasn't sure what I meant. I either meant what Emma just said, what was the process, or I meant who did it.
A lot of guys.
A lot of guys, and were they happy to do it?
Oh heck no.
No. They were nasty. They were slaves, and they thought that the Pharaoh was very nasty. This is the start of the rumors that this Pharaoh was just evil and wicked. Historians don't actually think that anymore. But remember, when Herodotus visited, this would have been 1,500 years ago for them, or more. So they didn't know. I mean, it's quite possible that what Herodotus was told was, as far as the Egyptian priests knew, this was accurate, but they were inaccurate. Okay, so we left off at the end of Book 2, and Amasis, who's saying you're going to expound, and I said we would look at that. So why don't we just very quickly. What? Here, what paragraph did I say that was on? It's in 170 what? 173, thank you. Yes. Amasis established the following routine for himself. He worked diligently on serious matters from dawn till the peak market hour, and after that he would drink and banter with his drinking companions. His close friends and family were disturbed by this behavior and said, "Sire, You're not conducting yourself properly by pursuing worthless pastimes. You ought to be seated solemnly upon your stately throne, transacting affairs of state throughout the day. That way the Egyptians would know that they were being governed by a competent man. But Amasis retorted, when archers need to use their bows, they string them tightly, but when they have finished using them, they relax them. For if a bow remains tightly strung all the time, it would snap and be of no use when someone needed it. The same principle applies to the daily routine of a human being. If someone wants to work seriously all the time, not let himself ease off for his share of play, he will go insane without even knowing it, or at least suffer a stroke. It is because I recognize this maxim that I allot a share of my time to each aspect of life. So now that we have to maybe think of something nice to say about Amasis, I'll just leave you with one more thing, and then I know I need to let you go. But that is a little fast. People looked down on him. He did rebel against the king. He did rebel against Pharaoh, but with a lot of help, because the former king had, I don't know, cut off that guy's nose and ears, and it wasn't very nice. But nobody thought very highly of him because he was a commoner. And he had this basin, this foot basin, bronze, gold, something like that, and you know, rinse your feet in it, whatever, and or you know, like a chamber pot, pee in it, whatever. And so he had it melted down and made into a statue, and he put it out, and people started worshiping it. And then he called everybody. And he said, "Here's the deal, guys. You know that thing out there? That's the thing you used to pee in and stick your feet in, and now you worship it because I just I changed the form. I used to be a commoner, now I'm the king." What? You know, you can take something that was once for common use and make it something set apart and special. That's me. You'll do it to a foot basin, but you won't treat me with respect. And said he won him over. He said, okay, that's legitimate. And they started obeying him. Okay, I am going to have you read all of books 3 and book 4. However, they're much shorter. Okay, they're shorter. Book 1 is just crazy long. If it becomes a problem, and this might be this might be one of the heaviest weeks, feel free to read, if you need to, just some of the summaries, right? The paragraph summaries, till he gets back to the main story again. Especially if it's, here are the customs of, blah, all right? Do your best. It's less than I had people read last 4 years ago, if that makes you feel any better. And you're thinking, no, Mrs. Ferguson, this does not make us feel any better. Hopefully, though, you will find it lively. I mean, I think his stories are kind of fun. They're interesting once you get reading. Like, oh, what's going to happen to this guy? Oh, and he's cooking his kids and feeding them to him, and now it's kind of interesting. We'll see what happens with Cambyses. His story is very interesting. I will see you guys next week.